Welcome to the Sustainable Living Podcast. Tips, tools, and tactics for living a heart-centered life that honors Mother Earth and her inhabitants. The information shared on the Sustainable Living Podcast reflects the opinions of host Marian West, Janice Fryatt, and their guests. Please use your own discretion in research before applying any information to your individual situation. Now, here are your hosts, Marian and Janice.
Welcome to the podcast, everyone. I'm Janice Fryatt.
And I'm Marianne West.
Yeah. And it's been a while since we've gotten together. We have a very specific topic to talk about today. But before we get into that, how have you been, Mariana?
We have been great. Super busy and lots of things happening, but overall great. So,
Yay.
Want me to share some of the things I've been doing?
Please.
You know what? We're going to have 100th episode coming up, like really, really soon.
Yeah.
So let's share all the, things we have been doing and we have been into at this episode.
Yeah.
And look at me, I'm like moving around, and I just learned that I should be very quiet in front of the microphone and not move around. So sorry, people. I'm a mover.
Well, this is on video too, and we get to see your personality. So, yeah, but the 100th episode is very exciting. It's been 2 years, and we're going to have a lot to talk about on that. Maybe many of the things that we haven't even discussed what we're going to do with it, but I would suggest many of the things we've learned along the way, for some of our favorite episodes, possibly. How about you? What do you think?
For sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely I want to share how we have grown and so forth. And actually, Janice and I are having another in-person meeting this weekend. So expect great things. Lots of changes coming up.
Yes. More obnoxious videos.
Yes, those.
Okay. Well, cool. Well, tell me
I wanted to mention one thing really quick, because that's super exciting and you will hear a lot more about it. But very shortly, we just did an interview with a lady, Lindsay McCoy, who does shampoo and body wash and stuff in refillable bottles. And basically, we call her our first sponsor because she offered us to send some product. And then we get to share with you the whole story, how we get it, how all of that is going. So that's very exciting. But we talk about it more later. I just feel like so proud of ourselves. That's all.
Yes, another milestone. All right. And you have been a busy girl. What have you been up to? I know that this weekend you were out and about. Could you share? This relates to what we're going to talk about here.
Absolutely. So this weekend we had our second food swap in the local area here. And so I went, and if you are going to our Facebook page ever, or even our Facebook group, you can see a little video of the event and the event from the months before. So basically we got together and we traded food, and there are like two really exciting things about it. One is that Janice was just interviewing somebody about food swap, and that's what you're going to get to listen to today. And hey, if you're on YouTube, you just have to jump over to that interview because we're not going to include it in the video. But if you're on the podcasting listening devices, you will hear the whole thing. Yeah. And the other thing, which is so cool out of it, is that I got contacted by a local journalist, and he's writing for The Reader, which is kind of a big publication in San Diego. I think there are readers in different cities too. It's a free magazine to be picked up, and so they make some money from advertising, but they are going to feature food swaps. So it must be the season of thinking about food swaps and how to do it.
Yeah, well, think about what time of the year it is. Of course, it's spring. Everyone's starting to get their gardening going. So, of course, we're going to be in the frame of mind of how we're going to produce this wonderful food and what could we do possibly with the excess. So that would be one reason. Another might be a lot of people are looking around at the economy and thinking we're in a pretty precarious spot right now. Things could happen that could have a very profound impact on all of us in the next few months. So the idea of having some other way of getting things that you need without going to the grocery store in case maybe this stuff's not there, or from a preparedness perspective, other options for getting the things you need are high on the minds of many people. I know it is for me. And this idea has been actually something I've been trying to get to for a long time. And it was just, it's brilliant the way it's just been pared down to the essential. Boom. You just set up a place to go and people come and you just do it. And it doesn't have to be complex or anything. So I was put in contact with this woman, Sheri Menelli, and it coincided with Mariana doing these food swaps that she's involved with. So obviously Mariana could just talk herself all about this, but we thought it might be nice to have another perspective as well. She might bring something into the picture or into the story that Mariana might not be aware of or have thought of. So what we're going to do is we're going to share with you this interview. And again, this is something near and dear to my heart. I just get very excited whenever I see opportunities for regular people to just take control of their own lives this way, instead of being dependent on whatever, big corporations, government, what have you, and create and produce their own things, not just consume, but produce and then share what they produce. There's so many advantages, as we will talk about in this interview, and also as Mariana will talk about afterwards. So enjoy the interview, everyone. I'm excited to be joined by Sheri Menelli, who is a permaculture designer and consultant in Carlsbad, California. She teaches classes on zero waste, rainwater harvesting, California natives, composting with worms, and a whole lot more. Her passion is getting more people involved in growing their own food and growing communities through food swaps. And she's currently finishing a book on food swaps that she hopes to publish in June. Welcome, Sheri.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, well, I think this is a very timely topic, the topic of food swaps. I think a lot of people are very interested in that right now. But before we get started, would you share a little bit about your journey? What brought you to this place in your life?
Well, when I was little, my family had just a small garden, and I remember I really loved gardening when I was 6 years old, and we didn't do much with it after that. We didn't garden a lot. But when my kids were little, I started thinking, because I had moved from the Chicagoland area to San Diego, and in San Diego we have really incredible weather year-round, and I was starting to get very concerned with the GMOs and with organic food. And I started thinking, why am I not growing any food? And it would be really a great thing to do with my kids, because my parents did it with me, and it really affected me at a young age to see how food was grown. And I thought, oh, how fun it would be to grow popcorn. And so we started a garden, and I discovered permaculture through a few books, Gaia's Garden and whatnot, and I just was beyond excited about it. It really filled in the gaps of, I knew something was missing with organic gardening, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was and put my finger on it until I read that book. And then I got interested in microbes and soil, and a whole new world opened up. And so years later, I started teaching classes in rainwater harvesting and how to remove your turf and put in something that's a little bit more drought tolerant, and composting with worms, etc. And basically, one of the things that always bothered me is I started going to more farmers markets, and I really enjoyed buying fruit and vegetables that were a lot fresher. It got to the point where it was really hard for me to buy anything at the grocery store because I just didn't know where it was coming from, and I didn't trust that they were always truthful about, if it was organic or whatnot. But at the farmer's market, I just started thinking, it's really ridiculous. I'm buying oranges and I'm spending like $10 for oranges, or maybe, $6 or $7 for avocados, or all this money on mulberries or raspberries or strawberries or whatever's in season. But yet when I would look around my neighborhoods, especially the older areas of Carlsbad and Vista and San Marcos and Escondido, I would see people with huge trees, avocado trees, citrus trees, peach, apple, you name it. And you knew from watching, going past their yards week after week, that they weren't picking that fruit and that they were just ignoring it. It was all going to waste. And I remember thinking, gosh, this just is so annoying to know that I have to buy food when there's people that have so much abundance and they're just throwing it away. And I was complaining to a friend, and he said, there is a group on Facebook that is called San Diego Backyard Gardeners, I believe. And he said, they trade. So I got on the group, and there were already like 2,000 people on the group. And I did a few trades, but I found out pretty fast that it was kind of inefficient because somebody had mulberries, and they were all the way in National City, which was a 45-minute drive for me. So I went all the way down there because I just really wanted mulberries. And, I traded them for some onions or whatever I had in the garden at the time. And I did another trade where it was a 15-minute drive for eggs, and I traded them whatever was in my garden. And I started thinking, okay, well, this is great, but this is just not worth it with all the gas and the time that this takes. And then somebody on the group got smart, and they said, why don't we just meet at the same time and place and have a big get-together and swap? And so that was about a year ago. And I went to one of the first ones, and 26 people showed up. And I had dragged my husband, who was kind of kicking and screaming. He really didn't want to go because he thought it was going to be boring, and he didn't know what to expect. But I needed help because I had brought my own table, and I had a tablecloth, and I had all this other stuff, and I wasn't quite sure where I was going. So he came with me, and he had the best time. We ended up probably getting $70 worth of food. We had homemade bread. We had honey, radishes, lettuces. I got every kind of citrus, I think, imaginable that trade. Somebody had peaches. Somebody was in Julian, which is one of the mountainous areas, and it was about a 45-minute drive down, and they had come down with apples and quail eggs. I had also gotten chicken eggs. Somebody had made grapefruit scones. Somebody else had lip balm. Somebody had homemade soap. Somebody had recyclable bags that they were painting really some beautiful pictures on. And I can't remember what else. But when we came home, I laid it all out, and I started counting. I decided I was going to count how much I had and then see what it would be at the store and price it. And it was about $70 worth of food. And we just felt like we won the lottery because we had so much fun there. Oh, there was also muffins, and somebody had made chocolate truffles. I mean, it was just so much food, and I felt like I didn't even have to sacrifice. What I brought was just the stuff that was abundant in my garden. Like I had too much kale, I had too much Swiss chard, I was growing some sugar cane, and I had way too much of that. I had some comfrey and yarrow, and a few starts of some things that I just didn't want or need. I mean, everything that I had was just going to go to waste anyway, so I just kind of almost felt like I cheated the system.
I think you did. That's exciting. I have to tell you, just the way that you described it, I'm getting excited about it. I would love to be at something like that. It sounds like it would just give you a lot of satisfaction because, here you are helping fellow growers, fellow individuals like yourself, and you're getting this healthy food, hopefully with, a lot less of the preservatives and chemicals that we don't want. And it sounds like it was fun too.
Oh, it was a blast, and it only took 45 minutes.
Wow.
And so we were in and out, and I went, wow, that was better than going to the grocery store or the farmer's market. I came back with far more than I would have bought, going to the farmer's market, and yet I had a great time. I met new people, and they were all like-minded.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's dig a little deeper into this. you're the first person that I've really come across really talking about food swaps. We've talked a little bit about just, as gardeners kind of sharing our produce, but, obviously it sounds like there was a lot more going on there. It wasn't just about the produce. So what kind of issues does this solve, maybe in a local economy or a local community?
Oh, so many. First of all, you're going to get stuff that is fresher than you could possibly get anywhere else. Because I had one gal for one food swap who brought her blackberries, and they were so ripe and they were so delicate that they were literally falling apart. They wouldn't even last a half hour. You couldn't even bring them home to your fridge. You had to eat them right then and there. And they were the best blackberries I had ever had. And you're also going to get some more heirlooms. I know that with farmers, they really worry about, well, how well will this ship, or, will it make it to the market if I'm going to the farmer's market? They also are going to tend to grow things that maybe have a quicker maturity and grow faster. So if it's a cucumber, they might take one of the more typical cucumbers that you find on the market, and not like one of my favorites, which is striped Armenian. And because, most people look at it and they're not quite sure what it is, so they're just going to ignore it, and they just want the regular green cucumber they've seen at the store. So you're getting a lot of really different and rare things. So you're also helping with diversity, of the seeds, because I think that as home growers, we tend to look at more heirlooms besides just your typical tomatoes. And at least in San Diego, we have a lot of people that are into rare fruits. So I'm getting... I've got a jelly palm tree, and most people have never tried jelly palm, which tastes like juicy fruit and makes really great jelly. Loquat, cherimoya, pomegranates, not all of those are rare, but they're maybe not as easy to find. Guavas, but you can find a lot of different varieties that you won't typically find at the farmer's market or at the store. So that's one big thing. I think that you get better nutrients, because the sooner you pick your produce, the more nutrients it will have. The sooner you eat it after it's picked. And most of us that are going to these food swaps are picking it just an hour or two before the swap. And so you really can't get any fresher than that. I think another thing is it's a good way to get to know your farmer. Like they always said, get to know your farmer, go to the farmer's market. I have always found it's very difficult to get to know your farmer at the farmer's market because they're very busy. And I'm not always sure what they're spraying and how truthful they are. Like, even if they are organic, I know that there are still certain things that they can spray and do that I don't necessarily agree with. But I found that at the food swaps, I'm really surrounded by like-minded people, and we're tired of the chemicals and we're tired of the sprays. And so, you really get a chance to know them and find out what their beliefs are and how sustainable they want to be. I think it solves the food desert problem. If we were to do this in every place that has a food desert, I think you'd find people getting very creative. You can grow so much just on your own windowsill. And we could probably find neighbors that had extra yard space that don't want to grow but wouldn't mind that you grew. And maybe vacant lots as well. So I think that would be a really good way of solving that problem. But you'd also possibly get people from other areas of that county and other cities to come in, where they are growing more food. You bring the community together. I have met so many nice people, and it's also gotten me more into gardening and also more into trying new foods that I never would have tried.
Oh, those are so good. Those are great advantages, great benefits.
Oh, but there's more.
Let's hear it.
Well, it also saves money. I mean, gosh, the fact that I saved $70 just on one day of trading, or 145 minutes of trading. And it also decentralizes our food, which I think is so important. So we're not paying taxes on it. We're not giving money to the big companies.
Yes. Huge. Oh, my goodness. And one thing I would add to all of that would be that it's going to strengthen your local economy so that,
exactly.
yeah, if the whole economy falls apart, you have this little micro economy that's you're going to have a way to get your food and things that you need that doesn't rely on this kind of just-in-time delivery system that all of our groceries stores rely on. So wonderful. Oh, exciting.
Yeah, it is. I'm so thrilled by it, and everybody I talk to about it, it's like they get the bug too, and they, even if they're not gardeners, all of a sudden you see them light up and they're excited about it. So
Yeah.
I really think that there's something here about it that could be done, worldwide.
Yes, yes, yes. So on that note, did you have you ever started your own food swap, or is this the food swap that you just kind of continued to be a part of?
Well, it was a Facebook group, and I noticed that there were only a few food swaps, and they weren't on days that I could always attend because I have kids and we have a lot of things going on the weekend. So I started my own in Carlsbad and just picked a day and time that I thought was convenient for me and just invited anybody that wanted to come, got onto nextdoor.com and told friends and started a mail list because Facebook wasn't always good for everybody as far as a way of communicating. And I keep encouraging other people, just pick a day and a time and a place and start one. But you have to do it regularly because if you don't, you tend not to get the crowd that you could.
Well, could you walk us through that just a little bit? If I wanted to start a food swap, which I definitely am considering now, what do I need to get started?
I would find a good day, time, and place. I would probably do it in some kind of park where where they've got picnic tables, so that you don't necessarily need to bring your own card table or blanket. I mean, we still bring like a tablecloth or a blanket, but it's so much easier if you don't have to bring a table. And I would get onto nextdoor.com, and I would post that we're doing a food swap and kind of explain a little bit about what it is and what you can bring, even if you're not a gardener. I would tell all my friends. I would probably get on Facebook and see if there's any local groups doing something similar. And I would contact any community gardens and gardening groups too.
Wonderful. And
it's really not that hard. And I know that there's some other ones too. There's another group that does something, and they do it a little bit more, I guess, sophisticated, where they have you check in and you write down everything you have, and then you give bids to other people, and then they accept bids, and the whole process takes like 2 hours. This is so different. We kind of look around at what we want, and we go around and go, hey, I really want some eggs. Do you want any kale, or do you want something else that I have here? And then we figure out how to barter from there.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it's simple. It can be complicated, or it can be very simple. I personally...
Yeah, I prefer simple.
I do too. I generally do too. But I wanted to ask you, if you're having it in a park or someplace public, and somebody comes along that doesn't really have anything to barter, but they want to participate, do you have any protocols for that?
I do. I usually have a notebook there, and I say, well, you can put your name and email, and we can invite you to the next one. It's usually every 2 weeks on Friday at 10. But, the most important thing is it's barter only, because when you get into food, and especially if somebody's preparing food, the cities and the states get very cranky about you accepting money. And I have heard of one lady who had made ceviche, and some guy had come with his daughter, and he's begging her for some because she's so hungry, and offers her $10. And she took the $10, and she ended up getting arrested.
Oh, but with bartering, that's not an
bartering,
issue?
It's, as far as I know, I think it's important to probably check in each, city and county. But, especially if you're doing it as a club and you get to know each of the members, you're just bartering. You're just trading what you have yourself for something else.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Well, yeah, I would highly recommend that anybody who's considering doing something like this definitely check your local rules and regulations. But
the first thing we always say at every time that we do have a food swap is absolutely no money exchanging.
Okay.
That's you'll get kicked out of the group if you're going to do that.
Well, I like that anyway, because I think we all need to kind of brush up on our bartering skills. We're just not used to doing that. And I think bartering is a really viable way of again building up that local economy, so that that is parallel to the regular economy, so that when things go bad there, that your local economy isn't so drastically affected. And also you're encouraging people to produce. Let's get out of this mold where all we do is consume. If we are producing, it's more sustainable.
And I think we're teaching our kids how to be more of homesteaders. Like, we started playing around and making lip balm, and we've been making some other things. And I wanted to teach my kids, hey, you don't have to buy everything. There's so many things you can just make instead.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. And again, without all the chemicals and harmful toxins. So, that's so exciting. So, also, what are the pitfalls to avoid when you're trying to do this? I think you touched a little bit again on making sure that you're not running afoul of any local regulations. Is there anything else you would add to that?
Yeah, if you don't make it on a certain day and time and recurring, you're going to have a lot more, you're not going to have a big attendance. And if the attendance starts dropping where you only have 4 or 5 people, then everybody starts losing interest. If you can get 12 to 15 to 20 people to come every time, you really have a lot of variety to trade, and it becomes a lot more fun.
Excellent. Okay, well, how can people learn more about food swaps?
I have some articles on a blog. They can go to earthfriendlyhomeowner.com, okay, or go to our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/earthfriendlyhomeowner, and ask there. I try to send out an email of any food swaps that I'm aware of in the county once a week, so that people can join. But really, I would really love to see people start their own, because I don't think we could have too many of these.
Yeah, sounds like it. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sheri, for joining us here today and talk about such an interesting and timely topic, especially in these very uncertain economic times. Was there anything that you would like to add or with our audience today before we say goodbye?
No, I can't think of anything except that I'm just so excited about this, and there's probably going to be ways in the future of improving it. But if somebody's doing a food swap, I would love for them to contact me through the website, or Sheri, SHERI at RJ, SHERI at earthfriendlyhomeowner.com, because I would love to, continue to write about it and inspire people. And stories, I think, are always the best way to inspire.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thanks again, Sheri. You take care. And please let us know if there's any updates or anything that you want to share with our audience to keep us posted on what you're doing and what's going on with the food swaps.
Okay, I will. Thank you.
So now that we've experienced this wonderful interview, let's talk about your experience with food swaps, Mariana. When did you come across this idea, and what's been your experience with it?
So I came across the idea a long time ago, and there are so many different ways to do it. When my kids were little, we used to do it very informally. Said a lot of us would come together and just one would bake bread and the other one would do this. And we didn't even call it a food swap. It's just we did as part of our little community. And when my children were little, and some of you or many of you might already know that both Janice and I have that background in La Leche League. And so that was an organization supporting moms who want to breastfeed. And a lot of those moms also chose to stay at home with their children, not at home, but because we were going everywhere. Mm-hmm. We hardly, we weren't at home very much. But that's the word people are using choosing not to have employment outside of your home, but have your child rearing be your unpaid employment, so to speak. And because of that, you have to fill the income void by making a lot of things, at least the group I was hanging with did. So we didn't even only swap food, we did clothing. Some of us were better in sewing than others. So it went a lot further than that. And then after now having a big garden, I got more involved in thinking of the abundance. And of course, when you first start a garden, you don't have that much to share. But I think every gardener almost likes more to share their bounties than to eat it themselves. There's just something about saying, look, I grew this and I want to gift it to you. So that idea came up, and I live in San Diego, and there's quite a bit of community activism going on in the town. So there were a lot of channels already established, but I wanted to throw this in right now so Janice and I will write up a little guide about how to get a food swap started if you don't already have resources in your community. So in San Diego, there were already quite a few different food swaps. Like Sheri has one, but she lives in Carlsbad, and I live in Lemon Grove. So that's both of us are in San Diego County, but that's an hour drive. And that's not necessarily sustainable to go for an hour there. Then, you spend a couple of hours at the swap and you go back for an hour. That's basically your day. By the time you count the time going out and collecting things in your yard and, all of that. And then another thing which can sometimes be a problem with food swaps, and that's to look into, like with every kind of community, when free things are involved, you will find some people which very much overvalue what they offer and undervalue what other people have to offer.
That's a pitfall. So how do you deal with that?
So one of the person which is very active here in San Diego, her name is Kiki, and I forgot her last name. But she wrote up a really nice little tip sheet maybe. And one of the things she is suggesting is that you have a money value for your items in your mind. You don't put it on anything. This is happening just in your mind. And then when you trade, you kind of think about what would you spend on buying said item somebody else is offering. And then you decide if it is a fair trade for you or not. And when you're in any kind of swap situation like that, you're never obligated. Only because somebody asked for your item, you don't have to say yes, but you can say no in a very nice way. You can say it in a way, oh, let me see what else is available. I get back to you later. And I thought that was an excellent tip she had to keep the door open to maybe later, because really when you bring a whole bunch of stuff with you, you don't want to go home with it.
Yeah.
So by the end of the swap, so usually a swap is maybe an hour and a half, dedicated time for that. If you still have items, you might be willing to swap it for some you don't think is quite the same value like you are giving. But again, part of the fun of a swap also is the spirit of giving, so there can be both things involved. And truthfully, a lot of times when I have gone to the swaps, I didn't go so much for, I want to bring all this food home. For me, that was like a great side benefit.
Yeah.
I mostly wanted to go to build community because to me, that is so, so important. I think the points about food security and stuff, they are all very valid. But I'm like really picky with my food. And so I probably wouldn't want to eat an item somebody else has canned. because I'm very super conscious of safety issues and so forth. And unless I know that person, I know if they have the same standards like I do, I might not want to eat prepared food.
It's a good thing to have that kind of protective mindset about what you are buying, what you're purchasing to eat. I would love it if we could all, give it to somebody else and know that those people are going to make sure that everything that we eat is going to be safe. However, I have found over time that many of these agencies that we have trusted to do these things have other agendas. And so the idea of keeping the public safe falls by the wayside. Meantime, the public's never been told that. So they keep buying these things that maybe aren't so safe for them. And so I think at this point in history, it's important to really, take charge and not assume that everything is safe just because it's available for you to purchase.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there is certain amount of cockroach and mouse chopping. So sorry, people, that I'm blowing your little safe illusionist thing right now. But a certain amount of insect casings and mouse chopping is legal to have in flour and in canned goods and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, probably realistically, home canned goods are maybe always cleaner. I'm just assuming that everybody washes their stuff, but I'm just wonky that way. I don't trust other people's food preparation always. Right. That said, it's the last swap. I got bread and I got banana bread and I ate that very happily. So, it's my thing is mostly for prepared foods, like hummus or things which can go bad really quickly.
Yeah.
I usually don't trade for or canned goods because canning is such a things that you really should know what you're doing. Well, and I think, not everybody is as careful. Let's put it that way.
Right. And it comes to my mind that if you wanted to help to ensure people's comfort with buying canned goods at a food swap, then you could have guidelines that everyone agrees to abide by, and that everyone can see these are the things I do when I can my stuff. So Right.
Well, you could, or you can just bring it again into building the relationship.
Yeah.
Because I got some jellies, which I'm not that concerned about, high sugar items like that because they preserve pretty well. But like beans or meat or stuff like that, I would just be a lot more picky about. But, the relationship building part is that once you get to know a person, you get to know their habits and then trust can be built. And then I have friends, I happily take their canned goods because I know what their practices around their canning are. So again, it's a community building and personal relationship building, which I feel is really important.
Huge. I agree. But I also think that it's specifically important that you're building community around sharing your resources together. It's different when you're building community to, fend off the high freeway that's going to be running through your neighborhood. I mean, those are important, obviously, but sharing resources presents it's a different context, I would think. And I've never participated in a food swap, but I would imagine that you're creating kind of these ties that could serve you in many ways, other than just maybe the food swap.
Oh, for sure. I think especially if you become a regular and you get to know other regulars and you get to know what their specialities are and you learn from each other. So this food swap, there was a lady, she came for the first time, and then it turned out that I knew her from before when I had started my garden club, and she had come to some of the meetings, and she brought tons of apples, and the apples were a little bit underripe. So I ended up getting a lot of them because I wanted to make apple juice and apple sauce. And I have this really nifty steam juicer. And so I partly traded her for some eggs I had and some other stuff, but also said she could use my steam juicer at a future date when she has another bounty of things coming in. And then we kept talking a little bit more, and she semi-offered to maybe to do a community canning class because she has been canning for a long time. So we already started to put those little seeds about future engagements, which might go way beyond the food swap.
Oh.
And to me, that's exciting.
That's huge.
That's cool.
Yeah, because you are strengthening not just the microeconomy there, but you're strengthening your preparedness skills. You're sharing the skills, that we have lost, that everyone used to do, that in times of trouble are going to come in very handy.
And you learn new stuff. So the jams I traded for was oh God, what is that hot sauce called? Everybody likes
Sriracha.
Yes. It was sriracha, nopales, so cactus, fruit juice, apple juice, jelly. And then the other one was a tomato jam. And I have made none of those before.
Wow.
I'm like peach jam, strawberry, like the normal stuff, right? So I thought it was so exciting. And then I had my fresh bread and that loaf and that jam went the very first day. My son came over and it was gone. But we also have a Facebook group in San Diego, and I'm sure Sheri talked about that, and it's called the Backyard Food Exchange. And the lady I got the marmalades or jellies from, she had traded sunflowers for me. I had brought for my yard. And so I just looked at the exchange page because that group is going beyond the physical exchanges. You can do private exchanges with the groups that you post. I have 24 eggs and I'm looking for blah, 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 right? And then somebody might contact you and you actually exchange at your house. So that's a little bit different from having actually the physical food swap. But she posted that she made sunflower jelly. So she used my sunflowers and made sunflower jelly. And that got me totally excited because now I'm going to try some new. I'm definitely going to try that. And I never ever had heard about sunflower jelly. So
yeah, Sheri mentioned that as one of the advantages. I think just having the opportunity to try some new stuff.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Oh, that's so exciting. So what has been your favorite thing about food swaps?
Well, I like people. Sometimes I don't like people.
Okay.
But for the most part, really the community aspect is great. I love to see so here in East County, which is a little bit underserved in terms like the cool kids are hanging more in San Diego proper or in the coastal towns, and the East counties are more like conservative and there's not that much happening, right? Mm-hmm. So it was really exciting to see a whole bunch of people coming out. So there were 30 to 40 people at least at each of the swaps, and really start talking and creating friendships type of thing. And the other thing which I thought was so cool is that particular spot, there's a playground close by and it's very safe. So people feel good about bringing their kids. And at the last swaps, there were a couple of boys. They were probably 9 or 10 years old. And they were like so into swapping. They would come and say, well, I can offer you this. And then, and then I would like this in exchange. And then they would take the stuff they swapped and take that to others and swap it over again.
Wow.
It was just so cute. they so deeply got into it. And the kids were like the little salespeople, like
Yeah.
one family had brought a whole bunch of peaches and they put them into egg cartons. And the little kids were going, yeah, we have an overabundance of peaches. Would you like some peaches? They're delicious.
Wow. And they're learning skills that we need to know. I mean, bartering is a really, really useful skill that we very likely will have to use at some point. So yay.
Absolutely. Because I think one of the things is a lot of us undervalue what we're actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
People might be willing to pay $5 for a little thing of blueberries in the store, blackberries, but they might not be so willing to give it to your neighbor or backyard grower. I think that's something farmers deal a lot with. That at farmers markets, people expect to get everything cheap, right? At a Whole Food store, it's no question asked. Little tiny container, $10, no problem, right?
Yeah.
So it's a real lesson into stepping into valuing your time and your product. And then also a real lesson into stepping into non-attachment and saying, hey, maybe somebody comes and they really don't have a lot, but I can tell they really need stuff. And to just graciously barter for some I might not even want or need, because I have it to give and I can, So it's like those two aspects simultaneously going on. And I really like that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, you don't get that opportunity when you go to the grocery store, I mean, that's wonderful. I love that. Well, now you mentioned earlier that we're going to put together a little how-to guide on starting a food swap. So, we're not going to share everything, but could you share like maybe a couple of the top tips that we'll want to include in this guide?
Well, the first tip is to figure out, do you want to be the organizer by yourself, or would you like to already start creating community to find maybe a couple of people which are also committed to the idea? Mm-hmm. And personally, I recommend find a couple more people, because everything you take on by yourself, it just becomes a much bigger commitment. But then again, there are people which don't like to work with other people. They're good in organizing and they rather take it on themselves. And that's totally cool too. Mm-hmm. But I would think become very clear about how much time and energy are you willing to throw towards that project, because to have a swap to become successful, you kind of have to stick with it for a while. Mm-hmm. And also, the more people which have buy-in into it and feel that it's their thing, the more you're going to go towards success, because then it becomes this community-driven thing. And after a while, the person just have to maybe put a reminder out that it's happening. So I would be very clear about that. Then I would think about what time works for you as an organizer. And yes, you also have to think about what time works for other people. But I think sometimes if you think too much about what works for others and you make it impossible for yourself to maintain, then it's kind of a thing which can fail. Yeah. Because really, it doesn't have to be a weekend. It could be an evening, it could be even a morning. You just attract different crowds to whatever it is you're doing. So that's some of the tips, and we have a lot more. So.
Well, great. Yeah, so stay tuned. We will be announcing when we come up with our little guide soon, because we know a lot of people want to do this. I know I sure do. So with that, we're going to say goodbye. Is there anything else you wanted to share or say, Mariana? We're kind of coming up at the end of our time here.
No, just keep listening to our podcast. And actually, what I really want to say is that I'm so grateful for everybody who does listen to our podcast and shares it and subscribes to it. You guys are awesome. And yeah, I mean, we're just really thrilled how many of you did take the time to listen to us bubbling away.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
That goes.
Thank you.
Yes, ditto from me too. Thank you guys. We so appreciate all your support. That said, you guys have a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time on the Sustainable Living Podcast. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the Sustainable Living Podcast. For more sustainable living tips, join our Facebook group, Sustainable Living Tips, Tools, and Tactics, and follow us on Twitter.